Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another sort of special week on my channel. This week we are dedicating it to the legend that is Vincent Price. So we're going to be reviewing 3 movies of his over this week, and we're starting tonight with probably my favourite of his, and that is Theatre of Blood. Now this is an Arrow release. I believe this is a 1960s, maybe 1970s release of a film. And it has an absolute star-studded cast from the British sort of theatre. We have lots of people in here: Robert Morley, Eric Sykes, Arthur Lowe, amongst other sort of cameo parts in this sort of film. And it's absolutely wonderful. And Diana Rigg stars in it, and she's absolutely fantastic. And of course it stars our Vincent Price, who came over to the UK after being very successful in American cinema. He is American. To make some films with Hammer and other sort of companies. And this is one of those movies, and it's a fantastic original story. There's sort of like really nothing like it. It's really clever, and I love the way that it's sort of made. Now in this film, Vincent Price stars as a actor, but he put Edward Lionheart. He's a Shakespearean actor who plays on the stage, and apparently he's died and gone missing. But all of his plays that he seemed to put on were all negatively reviewed by these sort of film critics. There's a club of film critics in which Robert Morley, Arthur Lowe, and all these other famous actors are part of that critic club. Now, the story sort of based where Vincent Price actually isn't dead. His body was never found, and he has sort of taken homage in this old derelict building with a load of sort of like homeless down and outs. And I think lots of these are extras and actresses that were starred in his plays that got bad reviews, and he seeks his revenge on all these critics. And all these sort of critics get killed in various ways. Like at the beginning of the film, we see one of them who's like, he works for the council in a building sort of side of the council, and they've got a building that's going to be demolished, but there's loads of homeless people that set up sort of like squatting in there. So he goes there to sort of like to move them out, this guy, and none of them are budging, and in fact they all retaliate and they all turn against him. And one of the police officers that is there is Vincent Price, because he's an actor. He can dress up and disguise himself into many sort of disguises and stuff. So he's there disguised as a police officer. Yeah, so they retaliate against this guy, and he ends up getting killed. And he's one of the members of this elusive critic group. So the group hear about it, and they're all stunned by it. And so they start making arrangements for the funeral. And then we see like another death not long afterwards. One of the critics goes to an old theatre. He's invited there by some people there to interview famous actor. Again, they said it's Edward Lionheart, but he says Edward Lionheart's dead. But anyway, he goes along to see if it is him, to do this interview with him. And he sees him, and he's downstairs dressed up in this sort of like Roman sort of makeup and costume, because I think it's all these deaths are all revolved around plays and stuff that he's been in, and probably plays that the ones that they've been critical about, they get killed in the way of like a death from that play. That's why it's so clever and unique. Anyway, so he's there talking to him, and he's trying to convince Vincent Price, Edward Lionheart, that he made some positive reviews of him, and he did. But then he reminds him of the negative reviews that he put. Anyway, so he gets then sort of held down by all these homeless people that seem to be working with Vincent Price, he seems to be playing a little bit of a kind of Charles Manson kind of character in this sort of film, where he's built up this cult around him because he's a famous actor. He's built up of all these sort of people around him that will do anything he asks. So it's a very Charles Manson-y sort of thing. And in um, Edward Lionheart appears up from the backstage and says a few lines from the film with a spear, and he spears this guy right through the chest, and it's quite a gory film. And there's a funeral going on of the first guy that was killed, and the guy that he's just been killed has been tied to a horse, and he goes running through the graveyard, and all these people find the body of the second critic. And so they all leave the graveside, and the grave digger starts to fill the hole, and the gravedigger is Vincent Price. So he's watching them from every angle, and this is how this sort of film goes. One by one by one, he's picking them all off, and killing them in this sort of like very unique and creative ways. And it's such a clever film because Vincent Price, he would be an amazing Shakespearean actor because he's got that real sort of play theatre stage presence, more so than the film presence to myself. I think he would have been a lot more successful. He was highly successful, but I think he'd have been even more if he was on the stage more. And he portrays all these characters from these sort of Shakespeare and other plays that he's been in, and all these sort of killings take place at this sort of theatre and stuff. Hence why it's called Theatre of Blood. So this is like a revenge movie of people that have done wrong. So that matches Saw, right? So there's so many films I think that have been influenced by this film. I personally think things like Saw and all these kind of films, I think, yeah, they must have had some influence on from this film, because it's sort of it plays on that same sort of line. You know, if you've done bad by someone, bad things was going to happen, and that kind of does. And Dinah Rigg plays the daughter of Edward Lionheart, and she still believes he's dead. But then they sort of like they sort of reunite, and she realizes, and I believe she starts to help him in the end. I'm not going to tell you too much because I don't want to spoil it. But it was so highly original and so amazingly acted, and to see this category of like British cinema of the like the 60s and 70s in this film together, all being bumped off one by one, it's phenomenal. Absolutely, really, really cool. So what do I think of it? I think it's an incredible film. Absolutely amazing. It definitely probably is my favourite Vincent Price film. So a bit weird to start the week with my favourite, I think. But I mean, I do love loads of his other films, Witchfinder General. Another great film, which I'm not sure is going to be included in this week. But I will review that at some point. But this one, it's really, really cool. It's so different and so original. You know, I think Britain and British horror is really underrated in the 70s because the American market was doing the exploitation films and these sort of like really grisly sort of reality, sort of close to reality horror, like Last House on the Left, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Halloween. All these sort of things that were like people could relate to. I think that sort of took over the horror market, and a lot of English films seem to have got like really washed by it. I really can't remember the year of this film when it came out. And of course, because I don't believe I have my glasses up here. Let me have a quick look, guys. See if I can. No, I don't have my glasses up here, so I can't read the small print on the back. But it's a fantastic film. Really, really cool. And I just love the premise of it. And when I watch it, I think, yeah, this film's taken that idea from this. And I think this film is one of those films that has influenced so many other horror films, just as much as Bay of Blood, Black Christmas, all these sort of other films that have been influential to like the slasher movies, I think this one is forgotten about, and I think this is just as important, if not so more, than those. The pluses of this edition: it looks stunning. It looks absolutely amazing. Yes, it's of its time. It does look 1970s or late 60s. It's got that feel about the film, but I love that even more. It brings that warmth to the film, and it brings that charm to the film, and it brings it closer to my heart, because that was my youth. And when I see like the cars and the phone boxes and stuff, it takes me right back to when I was a young lad, because I remember seeing these cars going down the road, and the sort of bus types and all this around the streets of the UK. And so it makes it even warmer. And of course, because I know the cast like Eric Sykes and Arthur Lowe from Dad's Army, and Robert Morley's been in pretty much most dramatic sort of dramatizations of that time. You just think, wow, to see these, it just really brings it in that charm and makes it extra special. Negatives of the film, zero. There's no negatives about the film. It's well paced, it runs really well, and it's an amazing film. I'm going to score this film an essential watch and give it a 10 out of 10. I can't give it any less, because to me, it's that good. It's that good of a film. I think it's underrated as a horror film. It doesn't get enough love. And when you sit back and watch this film and think, my God, yeah, I can see bits of like other films in this, you know. And I just think, yeah, what's it's even got like, it must have influenced some of the Italian films. Some of the giallo films must have been influenced, or this has been influenced by some of the early giallo films, because it still has that sort of premise to it too. It's such an amazing film that I just think more people should see it. So well done, Vincent Price, for starting my Vincent Price week with Theatre of Blood. 10 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you think of it. It's one of those films that just goes by and by. People don't really talk about it, or buy it or pick it up. They think, oh, Theatre of Blood's going to be an old movie. It's going to look really dated, and they missed the whole point of the story. There's some comical parts in the film as well, especially around like Arthur Lowe's death, where he's sleep in bed with his wife, and they sneak in that there's this huge chest that's been brought into his bedroom, and Vincent Price and that are inside the chest, and they anaesthetize him and his wife at night time, and they cut off Arthur Lowe's head and leave it there on his body, so when his wife wakes up, his head rolls off onto the floor. It's fantastic, really, really cool. I just think, yeah, so many films have copied this. I just think, yeah, amazing film. Brilliant. So a great way to start off this week. I'll be looking at a couple more of his, probably from his Edgar Allan Poe series of films, but simply because I did pick up a box set of his a week or so ago, and I want to have a look at a couple of films in there. The Haunted Palace is one of them, so that will be reviewed this week, and probably another classic from that box. We'll have to wait and see. Until my next video, please check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzlewell, I Am the Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, Sarah of Horror, Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House, and of course my amazing lad Lemon Lord. Hope you're doing well, mate. Until the next video, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.